Those are the only two places.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me okay? All right. Welcome to our Black History Month event, which is happening today, the last day of February 2019. I am Mitty Davis Jones, and I am currently the interim director of the Diversity Institute here at Cleveland State University. I was formerly known as retired. I retired in 2016 from the College of Urban Affairs, but I was asked to come back to work with the Diversity Institute. I'm very happy to be here and to fill in for Dean Roland Anglin, who had another obligation today, so I was asked to fill in for him, and I'm honored to do so. So, again, this is Black History Month, which is also known as African American History Month here in the United States. It's also an annual observance in Canada, Ireland, the Netherlands, United Kingdom, and, as you know, the United States. It began as a way of remembering important people and events in the history of the African diaspora. It is celebrated annually in the United States and Canada in February, as well as other places like the Republic of Ireland in October. The precursor of African American History Month was the second week in February, which was declared as Negro History Week in 1926 in the United States by historian Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. This week was chosen because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln on February 12th and of Frederick Douglass on February 14th. Both of which dates Black communities had celebrated together since the late 19th century. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. So today we have a panel which we're calling our intergenerational panel of individuals who are going to share their insights with us about issues related to Black History Month and the African American community. So I'd like to start off by introducing them. To my immediate left, we have Mr. Stephen Mentor. And Mr. Mentor is representing the generation known as the mature silent generation. But if you know Mr. Mentor, you know that he is anything but silent. Maybe mature, but definitely not silent. He has been an executive in residence at Cleveland State since 2003. He is also a fellow in the Center for Nonprofit Policy and Practice in the Levin College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State. From May 2010 through 2011, he served as interim vice president for advancement and interim executive director of the CSU Foundation. He assumed these duties following his retirement after 29 years, 19 and a half years as president of the Cleveland Foundation, the nation's oldest community foundations. For more than 45 years, he has been active in the greater Cleveland and the nation's philanthropic, public service, and voluntary sectors, as well as having served on numerous volunteer and corporate boards. His public service includes Director of Public Welfare for Cuyahoga County, Commissioner of Public Welfare for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Undersecretary of the United States Department of Education and the Carter administration. He holds degrees from Baldwin-Wallace College and Case Western Reserve University and 7 honorary degrees. He is also a member of the National Academy of Public Administration. You can have a hand for Mr. Mitchell. Okay, representing that generation of which I am part, the baby boomer generation, is Dr. Mamadou SEC. Following a career of life as an elementary school teacher and licensed social worker, Dr. SEC joined the School of Social Work at Cleveland State University in 2006. As a social work faculty member, he has been teaching face-to-face courses, including Human Behavior in the Social Environment, and Fundamentals of Social Work Practice in the master's program. He is also teaching online courses in the Bachelor of Social Work program. He has published a number of articles focusing on at-risk and delinquent youth, adult offenders with developmental and co-occurring disabilities, and mental health courts. Dr. SEC has been providing service to the School of Social Work, the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, and the university as a member of or chair of various committees. Since May 2018, he has been appointed as faculty fellow for civic engagement to work with other faculty members to implement a civic engagement certificate program at Cleveland State University. And welcome to Dr. SEC. To his left is Reverend Dr. Leah Lewis, JD, who spearheads Three Butterflies Entertainment and Press LLC, which she founded and serves as executive director of Little Lumpy Center for Educational Initiative. Three Butterflies creates, produces, and publishes original content for TV, film, and new media. Three Butterflies emphasizes authentic, multicultural entertainment that provides positive and compassionate representation of under and misrepresented groups. She is an adjunct professor in religious studies in the College of Liberal Arts at Cuyahoga County Community College, where she teaches Introduction to World Religions. She received her Doctor of Ministry degree at Ashland Theological Seminary in 2008. Dr. Lewis is also a 2005 graduate of Yale University School of Divinity. She holds degrees from Bowling Green State University and Howard University School of Law. She is also a former councilwoman in the village of Highland Heights and is a community organizer. She continues her activism advocating for children, quality education, and those disenfranchised by systemic oppression. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Lewis. Okay, moving on to our Generation Y or Millennial representative. Erica Bettersen is a junior in the Honors College here at Cleveland State, majoring in urban planning and environmental studies. She has served in student government as a senator and cabinet member for 3 years. She served as a presidential student ambassador and has been a member of 5 student organizations, and she emphasizes so far, during her time here at Cleveland State. Last August, Erica was appointed by Governor Kasich to serve as a member to the CSU Board of Trustees, and she also worked to co-found Cleveland State's first speech and debate club on campus. She is a current City of Cleveland planning intern, and this summer she will be interning for Representative Marcia Fudge in Washington, D.C., and looks forward to working on behalf of Cleveland from the nation's capital. Thank you, Erica, for being here. And representing Gen Z, I hope that doesn't mean it's the last generation. I don't know what comes after Z, but we have Prester Pickett II. Prester is a former employee of Cleveland State University. He once worked for the Math Corps program here that was directed by Dr. Carol Phillips Bay in the math department, and a role as a tutor during his freshman and sophomore years at St. Ignatius High School. He has been engaged at Cleveland State as a member of the Malietu program, which was a cultural enrichment program under the leadership of Dr. Sandra Clark and the College of Education's Curriculum and Foundation Department. Additionally, he has worked during the past 2 summers as a student assistant at the Justice Center for Earl B. Turner in the Office of Clerk of Courts for the City of Cleveland. In 2019, this fall, Prester Pickett II will be attending Cleveland State University as a freshman and is interested in developing a career in criminal justice. Carrying the same name as his father, he is also known as PJ and has received various awards from the NAACP and for speech and debate at St. Ignatius High School. He fellowships at Institutional Baptist Church, Olivet Institutional Baptist Church, and he supports his family with various theatrical productions that celebrate Black history and address social issues. Welcome, Prester Pickett II. So as moderator, what I plan to do is to present some questions to each of our panelists, and we will start each question with on one end or the other of the panel. So we'll start on this end with Mr. Mentor, and then the second question will start on the other end with PJ and work our way down. Then we will have some time at the end to allow for questions from the audience. So if you have any questions that arise, or if you have some already, please keep those in mind as we move to that part of the program. So, Black History Month is, again, fairly new, depending on your age and stage in life, but it was not always in place during my lifetime. So I'd like to start off by asking the panelists, what is the significance of Black History Month to you? And how has the Black experience in the United States been observed during your lifetime? Let's start with Mr. Mentor.
I've been around the longest, so I guess I will try and be very brief and succinct. I think probably the most important statement I can make in that regard is I don't know that I had any sense really of Black history, Black achievement, Black History Week, so forth, until, frankly, it was in the 1960s. And by that time, I was almost 25 years old. So a little background, and I'll give you a few of the touchstones for me. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, born in Akron, lived in Portage, Summit, and Trumbull counties. Lived in Kent, Ravenna, I could name them, but most of them were communities where there was some degree of diversity or integration to absolutely none. I ended up in high school, going to high school in Kinsman, Ohio. If you go out Kinsman Road all the way to the Ohio-Pennsylvania line, you arrive in Kinsman. We were the only Black family that lived there. I can say that my early years awareness, absolutely none. Never in school during my elementary or high school years can I recall ever there being a discussion about significant Black persons who had been part of making this country great. Frankly, my touchstones are having an encounter when I was 5 or 6 years old, 7 years old, with the KKK in Braceville, Ohio, and our family having to move to another place. I remember very distinctly as a boy, Joe Louis, and being out and celebrating his fights. Obviously, Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby, the Cleveland Browns, Nat King Cole on television. Think back to those times. They were times of excitement and celebration, but not having a real great historical perspective. For me, sort of the coming alive, some appreciation is 1954. Brown versus the Board of Education. Integration rather than desegregation, or at least the hope. The sit-ins in '55 in Baltimore, and the Montgomery bus boycott. In 1956, going to college and for the first time reading Benjamin Qualls' The Negro in the Civil War. The sit-ins in Durham and Little Rock, and the Little Rock integration of schools in '57. The sit-ins in Nashville by college students, and in 1963 with Birmingham, the bombings, the March on Washington, and the reading of Lerone Bennett's Before the Mayflower. So that's how I gradually came of age and had a sense of some history. And many of these things many of the things in my career I've been the first at or the second at doing, but I've also over time learned, no, there were others well back who paved the way.
Thank you. Dr. SEC.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. I think my perspective would be a perspective of an immigrant who had never heard about African, this month's African month's celebration. But while before I came here, that was in 1989. That's a long time. So before I came here, there was no meaning for me to really know more about African Americans, their celebration and things. But in school, we learned about the struggle. We learned about the events, what happened. And one of my presentation in 9th grade was about what my predecessors just said. The sittings, the dogs, and so on and so on. The difficult life that African Americans were having in this country. So when I came here in 1989, I integrated African American groups, and they were really looking forward to see me among them, and to see how I could, they could link with me and see how we can exchange, how I could bring something to the groups. So, but also what I could learn from them. And what they did was to bring me to different events to celebrate the month of African Americans this month. So I learned about, the Kwanzaa. I learned about the flag, the black, green, black, and red. I learned about the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and I started connecting with them because I was saying, okay, these are African values, and they are still celebrating them here. So this is a way of saying we are in America, but also we are Africans. And I think that is very important that we celebrate that, that commonality, that connection between African Americans and Africans. And I think this month, this month's celebration is very important because of the environment where we are. Because if we do not celebrate ourselves, who would celebrate us? So I think the achievements of African Americans, celebrating them in this context, and not only in the during the month of February, but the whole year, I think it is very important for us. The environment may not contribute to it. The environment may not be positive for those celebrations, but I think we have to do it. And we have to do it in order to be recognized. We may be recognized, but this would be another way to be recognized, and even for our children to know well, to know better what happened in the, previously, when happened in the past, and how to celebrate the many achievements we have done. Thank you.
Well, as a member of Generation X, I think I have been steeped in African American history since the very beginning, in part because of my mother, who is a graduate of North Carolina A&T, and 7 of her 8 siblings graduated from historically black colleges. So it was through the way in which I was socialized in my family, and also through my formal education. In 1976, I was 12 years old. As I learned today, that's when Black History Month became a national holiday. It was also the year that the mini-series Roots appeared on television. That mini-series had a profound impact on my life because it was the first time that I saw man's inhumanity to man enacted in Technicolor. It was the first time that I realized that there were individuals in this country and in this world that hated people like me because of our melanin content. So as a result of that profound experience and because of the way in which my family socialized me, I had a commitment to African American culture. Through my elementary school, my middle school, and through extracurricular activities, for example, attending drama classes at Karamu, I became very familiar with African American art and culture. My favorite memories are learning of Langston Hughes and Paul Laurence Dunbar and Maury Evans, other African American poets, and learning of African American artists like Paul Goodnight, for example. So because of my placement in time and space, African American history has always been a part of my reality.
Thank you.
I think for me, African American History Month or Black History Month has always been something that I have been grown up around, and I've always been steeped in Black History Month and all of the accomplishments of Black history. Black History Month has been something that I have celebrated as an individual and have celebrated in my family for years. One of the most profound and I think impactful things for me, realizing and looking back, is that when President Barack Obama was elected, I was 11 years old. I was in those formative years trying to figure out who I was, where I belonged in the world. And in those formative years, through seeing such an amazing feat that our nation had gone through in electing our first Black president, I think that Black History Month kind of helps provide a context that Black people can be excellent. And that's something that I've had the opportunity to grow up with. I've always had that knowledge, and so being a member of the millennial generation, Black History Month has been something that has been commonplace. And so going forward from here on out, I think that Black History Month provides something very different than it has for the first generations of this new concept for our country. I've grown up always understanding and always knowing and seeing that Black people can be excellent. That is so important for self-esteem, for young people, and I think that's so important for not only Black children, but for children all over the world, for children of all different races and creeds. I think that showing that Black people can be excellent and that they can create things and innovate things and become and be members of our worldwide society, I think that is something that is extremely powerful. It's something that I've had the opportunity to grow up with, and that I've known for myself, and that others my age have known for themselves. And I think that this provides a really great platform for all of our future generations as well.
Well, to me, Black History Month has always been a part of my life, and being steeped in Black culture has always been something that I've been doing. So with my father, who is here today in the back, I've always remembered him doing the Kumba Arts Festival every single year and going to all these programs with him, sitting and, not realizing at the time that all this stuff was so important to me, just sitting in the back, bored and just wanting to leave. But it's now in this part of my life that I'm really understanding what Black culture and Black history means to me. So to me, I guess Black History Month means that there are people, that Black History Month is more than just slavery and the civil rights movement, that there are more important figures than Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Frederick Douglass, that there are so many people who are unnamed in our society that just don't get recognized. And I believe that Black History Month should be dedicated more to giving credit and honor to the people who have come before us and have strived to allow us to be in the society that we are today.
Thank you all. So I'm going to pick up on a point that was raised by Erica about the election of President Obama, and also kind of touched on by Prester II in terms of there being other people who are important in Black history. So certainly the election of Barack Obama will be a historic event forever. But it probably means different things to different people based on what we've already heard about people's experiences. So I'd like the panelists to comment on what the election of Barack Obama means to them and their thoughts about the historic importance of that now that he is no longer in office. So we'll start with Prester, the second.
Well, I guess my first memory of Barack Obama, I was a 7-year-old in first grade, and I remember being here with my father. We were actually in the Wolstein Center during his inauguration, and I remember sitting in the front row as a little kid and having my picture taken and put on the newspaper. And I really had no idea at the time how big of an event that was, but it was really inspiring to me to see that someone who looks like me and someone who shares the same culture as me is able to be in the top position in the government of the United States. So, and I believe that the election of Barack Obama and his presidency has really inspired a lot of young African Americans who may think that they don't have the opportunity or they don't have what it takes to be in the government. But I believe that President Barack Obama has allowed us to be inspired and think that, and know that we have that opportunity and that we are built for it and we are ready for it.
When President Barack Obama was elected, I was 11 years old, as I just mentioned. I was sitting in the classroom in our room in our house in North Carolina with my other siblings, and we were watching with our mom. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. He looks just like so many of my neighbors and family members. It didn't seem like it was something that was big and huge and impactful to our history. It seemed like it was commonplace because of the people who I had seen who were striving for excellence, who were doing good things in their community, who were going out into their community and helping those around them. He seemed to symbolize those same kinds of figures that I'd seen in my life. And so when I saw this man who was being elected as President of the United States, I thought that this was a commonplace event. I think that that's something that's so important for young people to see someone who they think is just like them, and that someone who represents something so great in their country is easily attainable for them as well. The election of President Barack Obama, while at the time did not spur any huge or big revelation to me, I think that deep down inside, I realized that what was in President Barack Obama could be easily found in me, in my dad, and my brother, and my sisters, and people who looked like me, and that was something that could be attainable. President Barack Obama's, his election represented excellence, Black excellence, and that is something that I strive for myself and that I have been raised with as well, so I think that that is important for us.
So I think that young people like Prester and Erica and those who until recently only knew Barack Obama as president will be his greatest legacy. So we have no idea yet what the United States will become. Until that generation ascends into leadership, it will remain a mystery. But I hope that those of us who are older will do everything within our power to support them. I remember vividly the night in which he was elected. I let out a cathartic yell from a patio where I was watching the returns. And it was a profound moment, not just for this country, but for the world. I think that that election and that family living in that house for 8 years without controversy set a standard that many of us hope will soon return. For full disclosure, I am a political progressive. I would have liked to have seen Barack Obama be more definitive on the issues of race, and I use air quotes because there is one race scientifically, it is the human race. The reason we all look different is because of the migration patterns of our ancestors over the course of millions of years. Consequently, there is no justification, scientific or otherwise, of inferiority among any class of human beings. So let me clarify with that. But Barack Obama, again, significant historical. The Obama family set a standard that, again, hopefully one day will be attained. Our democracy depends on it.
The election of Barack Obama in this country was exceptional, but it was not only in the United States, it was in the whole world, and particularly in Africa, because we are seeing abroad, we are seeing African American as dominating. Means that they are not seen as at the same level as everyone. But that election made the people think that there is a new era in the United States. And the way African American, or I would say black, I would not discriminate, black and African, the way blacks have been seen all around the world should be changed. And we saw him as one part of the, that will be contributing to that change. And the pride that we saw in the United States was limited, but all around the world, particularly in Africa, where people were seeing this as an event that will impact the whole world. And the fact that blacks were able to contribute to that election by the vote was very important, because it showed the unity that came and pushed that trend to a position where we could have an African American as president of the United States. And it was not something that could be seen as ordinary. It was extraordinary in Africa.
Talking about the different generations, I was 70 years old when Barack Obama got elected. And I can remember cheering in the house, finally, something been talked about for some time. Would that ever happen? So it was an extraordinary moment. And for me, because of my background and the work that I had done, the significance of that is now we have the first African American president. When will we have another? And you're asking this question on this day, you know, I can't help but think about the context of what has changed. Let's just look at the 2018 elections, where almost got an African American governor in Florida, almost got an African American governor in Georgia. Yesterday, was it, or the day before, the top two candidates in Chicago, where the Dailies dominated for 43 years, are African American women. How many candidates for the Democratic nomination? My point is, the significance of Barack Obama was, we can be more than senators, we can be more than representatives, we can be president. And that, I think, has been an inspiration and motivation for a great many things. And my expectation is, and my hope is, before my lifetime ends, we'll have another black president.
Thank you. Very interesting insights. So, Mr. Mentor, you mentioned the passage of Brown versus Board of Education, and there have been numerous pieces of legislation passed to promote equity and equality in our country, the Voting Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, etc. Yet there seems to be, still barriers to overcome, disparities exist. So can you talk about what some of the indicators of progress are that come to mind for you, and also what some of the biggest challenges are that are facing African Americans? So indicators of progress and the biggest challenges.
Are you starting with me again?
Sir. Yes. Just to make it easy.
Well, I mean, I think there's just no question that we looking at it, at least from my perspective and my life experience, that there have been major achievements on behalf or by Black Americans in this country, and I think we could point to many firsts, many breakthroughs of barriers, and some very significant progress in terms of civil rights. At the same time, one of the things that I've learned from my vantage point of the years is this is a never-ending challenge. And I often use the term, we find ourselves addressing enduring issues. That is, if we would go back for communities, and certainly for the African American community, what were the issues 100 years ago? Guess what? They're not terribly different now than they were 100 years ago. We still have not achieved equality in this country. And just to keep it short, I would urge you to look at the National Urban League's State of Black America. Just Google it. They do a report every year. They've done 14 of them, in which they look at the issues of equality with African Americans with white Americans. 72% compared to 100% if the white Americans. They also report for the 9th time on Hispanics. There are 78% of equality measured with white Americans. The point is, change happens slowly, and it is something that has to be constantly worked at, and the issues are the same: education, housing, home ownership, retirement. These are really, retirement savings, these are really serious issues for us in this country, and the widening income gap. So there is much remains to be done to get to equality.
One of the elements that could, bring us at another level would be to really materialize the efforts against gerrymandering. The phenomenon of gerrymandering, how they divide the location based on for voting. I think the former Attorney General Eric Holder is leading a process that may be of big impact in this process of bringing more African Americans to the polls, because we know that there is a number of African American, a large number of African Americans who cannot vote for many reasons. So not only changing the laws on voting for offenders, because we know that it has prisons have impacted the African American voting system. So changing that those laws, changing the rules of gerrymandering would bring more African American to impact the vote system. And that I think that's an effort that we need to promote, we need to support, and to make sure that it happens, so more African American could go to the poll and impact, that elections.
So, as Dr. Davis indicated, I'm a graduate of Howard University School of Law, which is the law school of former U.S. Supreme Court Associate Justice Thurgood Marshall. At Howard, we are socialized to be what are called social engineers. And I want to talk about the law because the law is important. Why? Because laws are arbitrary. Laws are crafted by individuals who are in power. This is why Africans were enslaved in the United States for, a couple of centuries. So we're at a critical juncture because we have an administration in this country that is doing damage to the disenfranchised and to people of color and to immigrants. And the sooner we get them out of office, the better for us all. And so the vote is important. The vote is critical. Gerrymandering is an issue, but let me share with you what is an even larger issue. Everyone within the sound of my voice is in a rarefied class. You are either in college, have degrees, or even have multiple degrees. In the city of Cleveland, we have a literacy problem. In the Huff community, the adult illiteracy rate, I was told recently, is 95%. In the Mount Pleasant community, I was told recently that the adult illiteracy rate is 97%. If you cannot read, you cannot read a ballot. If you can't read a ballot, you have no incentive to go to the polls. So until in this city we contend with illiteracy, both amongst the adult population and amongst our children, we will continue to have voter apathy. As I understand it, in the last election, the voter turnout was 8%, which means those who are literate are in power. This is why we have a criminal justice city in this county that is dominated by judges who do not look like me, who are incarcerating a group of people who look like me. So we have to deal with the educational system, not just in this city, but across the country. One of the things we have to do is we have to commit to reaching out to those individuals in our community who need help, who often will not articulate that they need help. So we have to do a much better job to empower people to change our system. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
I think we have all kind of touched on some of the indicators of progress with the election of President Barack Obama, with the election of several different black figures throughout our country, the almost elections of several black leaders throughout our country. I think that these instances of people who are sitting at the table that are making the laws that shape our society, this is extremely important and it is a sign of our progress. But one of the things that we are seeing, one of the barriers that we are seeing, I believe, is a separation between classes. I think we're doing a very good job of progressing as a community, as a black community, but I think that we have to bring those who are progressing down to those who are not doing as well and bridge that gap, that class gap that we're seeing in our community. So that's one of the main barriers that I believe that we see in our country, and it excites me as a young person who's growing up seeing all these problems that we're facing, that there is a platform for young people, for older people to come together to progress together as a community.
Well, I think piggybacking off of Ms. Bettersen and Dr. Lewis, probably the division of the African-American community. So I've witnessed this firsthand and I've experienced this firsthand as someone who has grown up a little different than my peers, as someone who has grown up in the suburbs, going to Catholic school, with two positive parents in my home, and going to school and being called sellout or being called white or asking, why am I talking white? And that's something that by other black people, and which is sad because, we should look at each other as African Americans as brothers and sisters, and people who should not bring each other down. Also that black people, especially my generation, it seemed like there's no reason to be proud of being black, and not being educated in our schools, especially more in the schools. And I remember hearing on the news that there's this one girl who was asked who was Rosa Parks, and she said, "Oh, isn't that the lady who freed the slaves?" Which is shocking and sad. So not knowing about our history, which I previously stated, and knowing about Black History Month. And another problem that I see in our society is the prison system. So I remember about a year ago, I saw the documentary on Netflix, 13th, by Ava DuVernay, and hearing a statistic saying that the likelihood of a white person going to jail is 1 in 3. Is 1 in 19, and the likelihood of an African American going to jail is 1 in 3, which was just shocking to me, and something that when I come here in the fall is something that I really want to look into as I'm studying criminal justice and criminology. So,
thank you. Very thoughtful responses. So I think we get a sense of some of the multi-layered and interconnected issues that our panelists feel affect the African American community. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. And Prester, you already kind of touched on this, but I did want to be sure that we addressed it. And that is, do you believe that there will always be a need for Black History Month, since it was established to honor the often neglected accomplishments of African Americans? And as with most things, sometimes the purpose evolves. So that's something to take into consideration. So will there always be a need for Black History Month, or would full inclusion of the Black experience in American history be preferable or even possible? And we'll start with you, Prester.
All right. Well, I think that there should not be a need for Black History Month in the future going on. I know that definitely now in our society that we need a Black History Month. We need to, especially my generation and the generations that are going to come after me, are going to need to know about our figures. They're going to need to know, like I said earlier, that Black History Month is more than just slavery. Black History Month is just more than the civil rights movement. And using our technology. See, I've seen on Netflix that Kevin Hart is someone who's coming out with a new show about their Black figures that we don't even know about, and people in my generation don't even know about. So I believe that yes, there still is a need for Black History Month, and for a long time there is going to be a need for Black History Month.
I'd have to say the same thing. There will be a need for Black History Month for quite some time. This isn't necessarily a discouraging thing, though. I think that the reason why we'll need Black History Month for some time is because we do have a lot of progress to make in our society and in our country. But I think that this gives us a very unique platform to progress. I think that using Black History Month as a platform to learn about the problems that we're facing in the Black community, to learn about the figures who have worked very hard in our history to change the things that are happening, and to provide a platform to have a conversation on what is happening in our prison system, what is happening in our housing system, what is happening that is disenfranchising Black people. Black History Month gives us a platform to have those conversations, and while we will have it and need it for some time, hopefully there will come a day in the future where we won't need it again.
So I agree with Prester and Erica, but I also advocate for a fully inclusive social studies curriculum that involves African American history, Latinx history, Asian history. As a U.S. citizen and as a citizen of the world, I really believe that as human beings, we need to have a better understanding of other cultures. I too saw the Kevin Hart show on Netflix, but I also saw John Leguizamo's comedy special on Latin history and learned a great deal. And, our current structure, the way in which history is taught in this country is problematic. A young person has essentially 12, 13 years perhaps to learn history. There's an organization out of Boston that has an office here in Cleveland called Facing History and Ourselves. They have a fully integrated curriculum that should be taught in every school in this country. You will learn about the Native American experience. You will learn about the African American experience, the Pacific Islander experience. So again, there's a curriculum that could achieve the goal that I seek, which is a fully integrated history curriculum. However, I do think that each cultural group should have a designated period over the course of the year where they are highlighted, where we have opportunities to learn information that we previously had not learned. But again, we need a fully integrated social science, social history curriculum for all citizens of this country.
One objective of the Black History Month is to celebrate African American achievements. But I think the month, saying this is a month and this is the period during which we should be celebrating those achievements would be very limited. So I would not only say it is important to still keep having this month celebrated, but also it is to be celebrated the whole year. Because if we do not celebrate our achievements, no one else will celebrate them for us. So we have to keep, celebrating ourselves, celebrating our achievements all year long, and maybe the highlight could be during the month of February. So a month would be okay and is okay, but it would be also important to have these events celebrated all year long. Thank you.
I think it's absolutely necessary at the present time, but I'm hopeful that as we think about the next 20 or 30 years that it becomes less important. I would embrace Dr. Lewis's statements and the others in front of me that we need to recognize that there is a lot to celebrate by a lot of Americans. And I'll just give you two personal examples for me. I have a grandson who has African American, Cherokee, Chinese, Polish American, Hungarian, all in his background. I just finally got from 23andMe my DNA, and I was stunned to find out. I got it, by the way, having just returned from Ghana to visit. And I was greatly surprised to find out that I was 53% sub-Saharan African and 43% European, mostly Irish and English. There's no reason why I shouldn't want to celebrate a lot of different things. And if we think about the changing demographics of this country, I would suggest it's got to be, we need to celebrate and inclusion, people of color and humanity.
Okay. Getting coordinated here. So thank you so much. I'm just pleased to hear the responses that you all have provided and inspired to do a couple of things based on your suggestions and ideas. So it's now time for questions and comments from the audience. If anyone would like to ask a question and direct it to all or any of our panelists in particular.
Hello. Hello. My name is Kenise Gray. I'm a student in the MPA program here. So my question is for Preston. So we are from similar backgrounds. I went to Hawken. My brother went to St. Ed's. We grew up off of Warner Road. So most people would not imagine that those are the schools that we went to. Out of probably the 15 children that we had living on our street, we are the only 2 who are in college right now or have graduated. So I can totally understand where you're coming from. My question is, what encouragement or what ways do you share the opportunities, or what strategies have you used that have worked to share the opportunities without those individuals in our community who may feel like we're Oreos, because I got that a lot, or we are just sellouts, and even though we're trying to come back in the community and give them the resources, how do you overcome that barrier of them allowing that to be the barrier between their overcoming?
Thank you. That was a really good question. I guess, well, something that I've been doing at Ignatius, which is a predominantly white school, is which we have a small class of African Americans. So I'm not, well, I am a minority at my school. So something that I've been doing at my school in particular is I've helped coordinate Black History programs, and that we have a multicultural student union at our school, which recognizes people of all cultures that are experienced at especially historically white institutions that are different than ours. And we've done many events and programs that help reach out to our community. I'm also involved in a number of activities with the Prince Hall Masons and our youth group, so which helps reach out to other people in the community, so especially in around Kinsman. And you know, I see these people as brothers, and they don't look at me different just because I go to a Catholic school or just because I live in the suburbs. That we see each other as the same, and we're all brothers, and we're all African Americans.
Would anyone else like to comment?
Yeah, for my children, for discussing with my children, I understand the hell they are going through in school. They are born here, but they have, you know, teachers that you know, are outstanding. So they are really being treated very negatively in school, and they had been suspended for reacting. So to tell you that it's not only because of the blackness, but also because of all the issues, because they are outstanding in school. They do well, and that is something that some of their classmates do not like, and they experience a difficult time there in school, and I have to deal with that as a social worker and as a parent. So it's not only that issue of being, you know, seen as talking like a white person, but many other issues. So we have to deal with that.
Anyone else have a question or comment?
You have to live a full life, and you can't you've got mentally not let persons put you in a box. I will tell you, I've spent my whole life, particularly as a youth, with you're more like us, you're more like them. Much of my career as an adult has been, oh, you're breaking this barrier, you're more like us, you're more like them. I think it's probably important to understand that there is a lot of human nature that tends to want to put you in a category or in a box or in a classification. Whether it's white, black, whatever, okay? If you're moving ahead and being somewhat successful, there always are some persons who have to find a way to explain that. Our challenge is don't let persons put limits
And I'll just add real quickly that we have to be like eagles who fly and rise above the storms. That's just the reality. There will always be individuals who deem us different, who think we are full of them ourselves when in fact they are suffering from low self-esteem. You know, all we can do is really love those people, and sometimes we have to love people from afar. But as individuals who are gifted, who have a calling on our lives, who have purpose, again, we have to be like eagles and rise above the storm.
I don't have a question so much as I have a comment. My name is Roland Anglin. I'm the Dean of the college here, and I'm exceptionally proud that this event is being held in our college. I want to thank the Diversity Committee, the Dean's Diversity Council for putting it on. I think I saw, who's here from the Diversity Council? Thank you so much. I want to thank the panel. But I also want to go back to the point about, is Black History Month going to be a standard? I don't think we ought to run away from the fact that Black History Month is necessary. It's part of our democratic tradition. America says all groups need to celebrate and be aware of their history and their contribution, because it's the basis of group participation, political participation. So I hope that Black History Month is a staple going forward. I don't see the need for it to end, because it's not just the history, it's the context for how a people participates in political life. And so I am extremely proud again that it's being held, this event's being held, and it's good to see all of you. So that was my comment. So thanks again to the panel.
Thank you, Dean Anglin. You have one more? Oh.
Hi, my name is Cameron Tolbert, ad majorem Dei glorum. Sure, you know. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of the great African Americans that many of us can think of. And his day is generally associated with service to the community, service to one another, service to African Americans, and diversity all around. What types of volunteer work would benefit the communities that we live in? Like Huff, as you mentioned, where the illiteracy rate is sky high. I went to St. Ignatius, and admittedly, I didn't do as much community service as I should have. A lot of the white kids were doing way more community service than me, were going out volunteering way more than I was. So, you know, what kind of volunteer work, how would helping out in the community really benefit us? Because it seems like 3 out of 4 people aren't going to volunteer. You know, it seems like we like to talk about it, but I don't know how many people in this room have actually been out trying to teach somebody to read, trying to help somebody with math, you know?
Can I respond? So many of you may know the name Margaret Bernstein. She was a journalist with the Cleveland Plain Dealer for a while, and now she's at KYC. She leads literacy initiatives throughout the city of Cleveland. One is called Huff Reads, and that's led by Rhonda Crowder, who is working with Margaret. Literacy for me is a foundational issue. There's a reason why it was illegal for enslaved Africans to read. Reading is power. Reading gives us access to knowledge. So I would encourage people to reach out to Margaret and to Rhonda to participate in Huff Reads. They're getting ready to do a Mount Pleasant Reads. And I just encourage as many of you who are interested in helping adults and children learn to read that you get involved in that. There's also an organization on the west side called Seeds of Literacy that is doing wonderful work in the city. Do know, though, when you deal with individuals, particularly adults who are illiterate, there is a great deal of sensitivity there. So they need to be handled with kid gloves and with a great deal of care, so not to exacerbate their embarrassment.
Thank you. I think we have one or two other questions, and we'll just say,
yeah, it seems that you addressed that question to me. I am the faculty fellow for civic engagement at Cleveland State. I was appointed and asked to materialize two projects. The first one is to have civic engagement as part of Gen Ed and have a certificate for civic engagement. Means that students would take 4 courses geared toward working with the community. They take the courses and the professor create activities and make them, materialize those activities within the community. They will get 12 credit and get a certificate. That would be in their, transcripts, and they could have a material document that would show that they have those 12 credit for working within the community and doing, project that could benefit not only the university, but also the community. So volunteering, that would be concrete participation to the development of the community and the relationship between CSU and the community, and you will get credit for it. So that is something that you may be looking forward. It should be starting as soon as the fall of 2019, but I'm sure to the fall of 2020, it will start.
Okay, thank you. You got some great ideas of ways to volunteer, and there are many, many ways to volunteer. I know as far as literacy, a lot of the schools have reading tutoring programs that you can volunteer for. So I'm sorry, but we have actually run over our time of 1 o'clock, and I'm glad about the enthusiasm that this panel has generated. I think if you want to stay and talk to some of the panelists, we can do that. But I'd like to express again appreciation for the panelists, for their comments and their diligence and preparation for this panel. I'd like to thank Dean Anglin for hosting us and for his comments, and to the Diversity Council for planning this and other events. Also, please be on the lookout for events coming out of the Office of Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement, which will be addressing some of these issues at the university and community level. So again, thank you all for being here, and please enjoy the rest of your day.